So we are moving to quite of a different topic, and I would ask to call Dustin, Nicolas, and Jeremy to come to the panel. They are going to talk about financial health in Latin America. They call it the missing piece of the story. So we might be a little bit scared of what we are going to talk about, but looking forward to the discussion.
I don't know if there's anything to be scared about, but thanks for the rousing introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Dustin Shea. I am Senior Director of Partnerships at Village Capital. We're a global entrepreneur support organization helping to connect corporates with startups from under-optimized backgrounds all around the world that are solving some of the biggest problems that we face as a society today. A huge amount of our work takes place in financial health every year, and we work in partnership with groups like PayPal, MetLife, and Moodys. We couldn't be more excited to be here to share a little bit more about what's going on today. I'm going to ask our fellow panelists, Nicolas and Jeremy, to introduce themselves, and then we'll kind of get started into this. So, Nicolas, over to you.
Very well. I'm very excited to be here joining this conference, and thank you for the invitation. Well, my name is Nicolas Simonassi. I come from Argentina. I am founder and CEO of Siembro Agrocréditos Online. It's a company that I've co-founded with a friend to help the farmers and agricultural producers to get access to better financial tools. I mean, credit is important for every company, but for agricultural producers and for farmers, it's really critical because there are capital-intensive industries. And it's a very, very attractive market, but it's not very well served by the traditional financial institutions, perhaps because it's so concentrated in rural areas which are more difficult access. Well, with Siembro, it's a digital platform that works as a POS lending device that allows farmers to access to instant credit. Meantime, they are doing their ordinary shopping of machinery, seeds, and fertilizers. We are different because we partner with suppliers, with the suppliers networks that provides the farmers with seeds and so on. And they become our main distribution channel, and we also partner with financial institutions. So we are an aggregator that brings this service that is a win-win for the whole industry because suppliers can sell more and get faster payments. The farmers get better access to credit, and financial institutions get easier access to farmers and to agricultural producers that are mainly in rural areas, using our platform to get to them.
Awesome. Thanks for the great overview. And Jeremy, why don't you give yourself an introduction?
So I'm Jeremy Davis from Moodys Corporation. I manage our environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, strategy, delivery, and reporting. And that includes our corporate responsibility approach. And about 2 years ago, we kind of refreshed and reinvented that in response to what we felt Moodys was most positioned to address when we looked at environmental and social challenges that we were facing, much of which I'm sure you're familiar with if you look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. And Village Capital is one of our key partners in activating the core of that strategy, which is empowering people with financial knowledge. It's through a platform we call Reshape Tomorrow, which is really designed to give entrepreneurs the tools, skills, and knowledge they need to grow their small businesses. So we're really focused on the role that credit or debt capital can play for small businesses as they're moving along the growth curve. We see a lot of them get stuck in kind of that Series A position, and I think there's a lot of focus on equity raise and equity capital, and we feel that debt can play a huge role, particularly in cap-intensive businesses like ag and others, to really accelerate and fill that gap. So really pleased to be here. Happy to talk more about any of that.
Yeah, and so as Moodys started to get involved more with entrepreneurship more broadly, like what's kind of the inspiration behind the Reshape Tomorrow initiative, and why do you feel like entrepreneurship is such a key role in furthering financial health?
Yeah, it's a great question. So maybe just some grounding. And I'm going to look at my notes so I don't get this wrong. But according to the IFC and the World Bank, in Latin America, only 45% of micro, small, and medium enterprises survive longer than 2 years. You contrast that with nearly 80% in continental Europe. But most importantly, MSMEs in Latin America, they generate 28% of economic activity and more than half of all jobs in the region. So I think to answer your question, when we looked at where's the gap in a lot of these local markets and economies and getting more capital to flow in, and how can we address that, what we found was there was this real kind of barrier cliff for really talented entrepreneurs who had really sound business models, but they got stuck, particularly kind of in that equity raising mode, and they kind of plateaued on their growth curve. So what we're really focused on is if we can enact systemic change in these markets through entrepreneurial solutions, then we know that will flow down to ultimately the mother of two who is out selling clean cook stoves and now can spend more time focusing on her children, their education, their health, while also being financially stable and resilient. So that's kind of the link we see between on-the-ground environmental and social challenges and the role that entrepreneurship and credit can play in kind of unlocking more capital flow into those areas.
Yeah, it's definitely inspiring to see the work that these early stage entrepreneurs are doing, kind of spreading out access to financial services and affordable access to financial services. And speaking thereof, Nicolas, can you tell us a little bit more about how what you're doing with Siembro is actually furthering the state of financial health across Argentina?
Yes, well, rural areas is where the main production of the farming is doing. It's very huge in amount, but it's very underserved in terms of financial services, and that was an impressive impact in terms of the development of the areas, and in Latin America of full countries. I mean, in Argentina, agribusiness is so important for the economy that the flow of credit to rural areas that allows the development of the country or may stop it. So I have found myself many times in this situation where there are farmers or agriculture producers, families that they cannot access to credit, and that was to push me to do this with Siembro. And we discovered that we would connect technology with financing and agriculture, and then simplify the access, and for both parties. I mean, for one part for the farmers that they are in the rural areas, and the other part for the banks and financial institutions and other corporations, financing corporations that they are mainly in big cities that are so far from the business. So technology brings us this bridge, and we started to simplify the processes, and for one side helping these banks, these corporations to understand the market and to be closer to the farmers. And we use the distribution networks of these, world brands like Monsanto or Dow or John Deere or so on, as a very huge network that goes very inside the country, and with them we have a huge capillarity to get where the farmers really need financing. So this is really improving and simplifying, and also I think for instance, in Argentina, it's so easy to hear that the farmer have to do like 100 kilometers, 2 hours traveling to go to the bank and back home to do whatever, and that's a huge amount of money that the economy is missing, and we are helping this to fix this with our product.
Definitely.
Dustin, just to build on that for a second, I think one of the really great things that we see in entrepreneurs like Nicolas and these types of works is, we're a company that looks at credit and risk all day, every day, right? From the credit rating agency across to Moodys Analytics and the risk analytics solutions that we provide. And those things can be scaled and modeled appropriately for something like what Nicolas is doing, but not with the lived experience that he and his team and the farmers that he's working with on the ground bring to the table. And so one of the things I just want to highlight and why we like this partnership so much is that we really value the importance of local solutions to local problems. But then once that, and I think that's what you'll see these entrepreneurs are doing all day, what we want to do is help them change that from local solutions to local problems to global solutions to local problems. And I think that's where you're starting to go next. And that's what we're excited about and where we see entrepreneurship and the role of credit and technology really accelerating that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But Nicolas, what do you view as I know, Jeremy, you have just outlined your view of how corporates should be engaging with entrepreneurs in this space, but Nicolas, how do you feel corporates should be engaging with entrepreneurs like yourself?
I'm very optimistic because in the last years, I've been seeing, not years, but year, for instance, I'm coming from my own experience in Argentina, but there's this corporate venture capital. There are movements inside the companies. I think it's very important that the companies, the corporations, understand that the access to financial services are a huge drive for businesses. So I think that implicates a lot more commitment and a lot more engagement to this kind of solutions that, as you said before, are in the field, in the ground, working with the problem, trying to solve it. And I think there's a lot to do, and I think that we should be seeing much more commitment from corporations. Coming from financial institutions till, corporations that are selling, in my case, in agribusiness. There's right now just small initiatives or companies like Cortiva that is now trying to engage with entrepreneurs to fintech and other technologies. And in terms of, for instance, in terms of funding, I think I believe that there's much more to do to pump more funding in Latin American countries. Many times we see only the government risk, which is, it's important to put it in the picture, but there's a lot of small business and not so small businesses that are much better payers and are much more stable because they're global, because their business is global. And they are also restricted funding because of whatever the government does. I think there's a gap there and must be addressed. And perhaps there's also huge opportunities for funding. For global funds or impact funds to access to Latin America, and they will do a huge impact. But perhaps, because I've been talking with many and they say, well, but the government this, the government that. I think there's a huge opportunity there, and perhaps partnering with companies like Siembro, we can help them to understand, to really understand the risk taken without only considering the government risk of the country.
Yeah, and Jeremy, so you had initially said that kind of the role of Moodys and other corporates in engaging with these local entrepreneurs is to try and scale these solutions kind of internationally, right? At least wherever that's regionally and contextually appropriate. But what do you think of the answer that Nicolas just gave? There's a lot of opportunity, obviously, on the funding side. But what else do you think that corporates can be doing in order to support entrepreneurs like Nicolas?
Yeah, so I think in the last decade, and when we think about rising markets like Latin America, there's been and talking particularly in terms of the point of the panel, financial health, there's been a lot of focus on what I would call financial inclusion, right? Solving the access challenge that a lot of individuals and entrepreneurs are facing. And I think what we need to shift to or continue to evolve is not just making sure they have access, but that they have the knowledge and confidence to use those products and services and the capacity to, right? In many cases, it's great that we've rolled out programs for the underbanked and unbanked. But if we're not giving them a reliable, stable source of income to access those products and services, then we've really just created, products for marketing's sake. And so I think the role that corporates can play is working with entrepreneurs more closely to really understand what are the challenges you're facing, how can we, using our unique kind of expertise and resources, help you solve that, and what is your strategy? Where do you want to go? I actually don't think every solution needs to be scaled globally and internationally. One, because it may not be the best business case, and two, it may just not be what that entrepreneur wants to do. And so I think to some extent we have to retreat from maybe forcing the narrative that we as corporates want to tell onto the entrepreneurial community. And I think also we have to think about the system much more holistically, right? And so, like I said, from the individual farmer who's accessing Siembro to their supplier, to the buyer, to the financial partners, whether it's on the lending side or their personal finance. I think that looking at that network, that system in its entirety is really key. And I think the other thing corporates can do, to be quite honest, is stay in their lane a little more. I think it's sexy to try and solve these problems kind of across the board, but part of what we did was, in trying to be really authentic when we refreshed our approach, was say, we're not going to focus on personal credit. We don't do consumer credit. There are plenty of financial services companies that do consumer credit. We're going to let them tackle that. Where we feel like we can really play a role is kind of more in this small and growing business or MSME sector when it comes to credit. And so I think I would encourage my peers at other corporates to really narrow their focus to what their core competency is, and then just double down and drive that home, and trust that your peers are doing the same in their respective areas with the same level of vigor and passion and quality that you are. And that is, I think, will ultimately start to really kind of unlock the capital flow in the system, in these rising markets across the system. Because to Nicolas's point, it takes the kind of lending or credit banking partner. It takes the big ag partner. There's multiple players, and I think for too long corporates we've not been good about playing in the sandbox with others, because naturally we don't do that from a competitive side on the business. But this is an area where I think we really would benefit from greater collaboration, and it's something we're pursuing ourselves.
Definitely. And I think that leads into a lot of the work that you guys are looking to do in 2020. I'm just going to keep saying 20s
here.
Yeah, but as you guys are looking at 2020, I mean, you've artfully articulated kind of like what you are actually thinking about from a high level, but what are you tactically doing in order to sort of align with your values as an organization and what you just put forward here?
That's a good question. So we joined the Finance Forward initiative, which Village Capital has been great leading, along with MetLife and PayPal and others, because we felt like, particularly in Latin America, there was we wanted to, again, connect entrepreneurs that are changing the way individuals and families use financial services at a systemic level, right? We're not so interested in kind of on the ground contained solutions. We really want to try and use the power of entrepreneurship and technology to unlock kind of system-wide improvements and enhancements and changes. So first is we're coming back, obviously, for Finance Forward 2020 because we've seen great results. I mean, Dustin, you're a pleasure to work with in the team at Village Capital, but really it's more the Nicolases who are coming through the program that we see the potential we thought was there when we did our due diligence and research is actually happening, right? And so we want to continue to scale that and drive that home. And we're looking at that across our partnerships, not just in Latin America, but globally, where We have a number of partners we're working with to implement these programs on the ground, but they all come back to that same theme of the role that credit and debt capital can play in catalyzing forward momentum and growth for these small and growing businesses, so that we can really just elevate the great solutions they have for more investment. And I just want to touch on that for a second, because I think that's something unique about the approach we took in Latin America program is we really had a strong focus on entrepreneurs we felt were historically excluded from the system, right? So not just entrepreneurs like Nicolas who are in Argentina and not in one of the equivalent of the Bay Area and New York in Latin America, which is Mexico and Brazil, but also we wanted to look really strongly at Afro-Latinx founders, at women. So this year in Finance Forward, we saw the number of female applicants to the program double. And so that's something we also feel really strongly about. We articulate that when we talk about social and governance risks, and when we're talking about big corporates. And it's the same. The principle is the same when we're talking about entrepreneurs. The more diversity we have in the ecosystem, broadly as well as within individual companies, we know that there's alpha there and there's benefit, and so we need to highlight that and continue pushing it forward.
Definitely. And that's so in line with the way that Village Capital has been thinking about all of this work. I mean, as we look around to the last 6 years, as we've been operating in financial health and in financial technology, we've been laser focused on trying to find and support entrepreneurs that frankly get left behind in the regular venture capital ecosystem. Finance Forward, as Jeremy's mentioned a couple times, is a global collaboration among MetLife Foundation, PayPal, and Village Capital, with regional support in Latin America, in particular from Moodys. The entire point of this initiative is to launch a series of regional, localized, contextualized accelerator programs to find and support the entrepreneurs like Nicolas, who are really changing the way that underserved individuals and small businesses access financial services. So as we look towards 2020, we'll be launching several more accelerators kind of all around the world, from South Asia to the Middle East to the US to Latin America. And we're always excited to find more folks to get connected to people here like Nicolas. Among them being some of the corporate partners that I'm sure are in the audience today that I think would really, really benefit from one last sort of piece of wisdom from Nicolas and an entrepreneur himself. What do you think corporates should do in getting engaged with entrepreneurs like you?
Well, I think what you're doing right now, I mean, Village Capital helped us to develop our company from a program in Mexico last year, and we right now we are trying to go to Mexico because this about what you were saying, local and global. I mean, going to global. When we went to Mexico, we discovered that farmers and the agriculture business were also underserved. And there was a lot of opportunity, and we started to plan to go there to use our knowledge, what we developed in Argentina, to also to help the farmers in Mexico too, and to have the industry. And I talked to many people in Mexico, and they were telling me that the agriculture was going down when in so most countries it's going up and it's producing food. I mean, it's so important. So that convinced us that it's a huge market too, but that also convinced us that our solution could be also good for them. And I think corporates might try to invest, like you was just saying, Jeremy, in identify these cases and to support them and to help by investing and also by networking and connecting the dots, so that our job is easier and we can impact much more people with much better financial services. And also Latin America, there are so many developing countries to have really improved that development and improve the life of the people, which is the important thing here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So we're honored to have had the opportunity to support you guys and to work with Moodys both this last year and looking towards 2020. I know there are a lot more panels that you guys are all interested in seeing, but if any of you have questions around financial health or financial technology for low-income folks or small businesses, feel free to come up to any of us after the panel. I am volunteering your time. But we'd love to talk with you, and we'd love to see how what any of our organizations is doing can support you. So thank you for the time. All right.
It's done.